I am again going to take the opportunity to talk about what doesn't work to reduce gun violence and mass shootings and what does.
Everyone get your stupid-proof vests on!
Mental health might well be a component, but if you believed that, you should fund mental health treatment services, which they do not.
Right, because if your holy government doesn't do something, it doesn't get done. How many times have we heard that? Besides, government solution for most of them seems to be to throw them in prison because they end up addicted to a plant. Hey, don't blame me for this video. Blame supporter Sid P, who requested it on the supporter channels in my Discord. If you'd like to request a video for me to debunk, just use the links below to go to Patreon or Subscribestar and sign up at the $2 level.
And in fact, in many states, every time there's a proposal to increase funding for exactly those types of services, they are against funding it. They don't want to do it.
They don't want government to do it because when government does it, horrible things happen. Remember all those government-run asylums that had to be shut down because of horrible conditions and terrible atrocities?
The thoughts and prayers do nothing.
And that includes prayers that are put down on paper and called the law.
If we could somehow pass legislation.
Yes, if our words were followed by just the right rituals, it would suddenly be effective somehow. Even though we see the exact opposite happen. I guess I'm going to have to link to Davi Barker's analysis yet again. The only effective means we have to stop rampage shooters is to have armed citizens present. And we see it over and over and over again.
Number 1, end the gun show loophole.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Pakman, there is no gun show loophole! Give it up! Firearm dealers have to follow the same laws and do the same background checks they'd have to do in their dealership.
Now, if you make a private sale, you as an individual with no license to sell firearms, if you make a private sale to someone else, you are not required by federal law to have that buyer background checked.
Because there can't be. The federal license is based on the Commerce Clause, which only applies to commerce that crosses state lines. The federal government cannot regulate commerce that takes place completely within a state. If you don't even know that, how are you qualified to comment on any legal matter?
Would it solve every shooting? No. But that is just obvious that should be done.
There's nothing obvious about it. As I've repeatedly shown, there's nothing stopping mass shooters or anyone else from buying guns on the black market or stealing them or whatever. I'm going to link again to that report from the Justice Department showing that over 90% of guns used in crimes were obtained illegally. Less than 10% said it was at a gun show or private trade. Geez, Pakman, even PolitiFact calls that claim mostly true.
Number 2. Universal background checks.
Oh, for the absolute love of...
Number 3, mandatory waiting period.
Are you just listing every single stupid idea that's been debunked already? Why don't you take 5 minutes out of your life to go and research this before spewing off your full mouth about it? This is nothing new!
For those who are going and saying, I want to do a shooting, let me go and get the gun, and you get it that day.
Once again, these mass shootings are not spur-of-the-moment things. Most mass shooters plan it out months in advance. As is the case with the rest of the gun control psychopaths, he made this video as an opportunistic response to the 2023 Covenant School shooting in Nashville. In this case, the shooter actually left behind a manifesto that even mentioned the date he was going to do it. There were detailed maps of the school, surveillance, entry points, and so on. He did reconnaissance beforehand. He had restricted firearms like sawed-off shotguns. And he even picked that particular location specifically because he knew he wouldn't be met with armed opposition. Once again, they despicably step on the bodies of children to shout out their political agenda, which would have done nothing to stop the shooting in question.
Number 4, No high-capacity weapons.
Just check a bunch of YouTube videos for how quickly people can reload, especially when there's no one with a firearm to oppose them. And by the way, while you're considering all of this, consider the people you'd be putting in jeopardy, who vastly outnumber the ones you wouldn't even be saving because none of this crap works. Like what happened just over a month ago on February 18, when a mass shooting at a mall in El Paso was stopped by a gun-toting citizen. The shooter was 16 years old and using a stolen gun. What about the 67-year-old woman whose firearm was her only defense against an armed intruder? The sheriff in that case said, "If it were not for her foresight to arm herself, the outcome could have been much graver. She absolutely had the right to defend herself, and I'm grateful that her decisive action stopped the threat and eliminated the risk of further loss of life, making her entire neighborhood safer." Gun laws didn't stop two Connecticut men, or any other laws for that matter, from trying to rob a store and shooting the owner. But the owner did because he was armed and fired back. Another man slashed a worker in the face with a knife at an Applebee's in New Hartford, New York, and started fighting with others. One of the patrons pulled his gun and stopped him. By the way, on average, it takes 3.6 shots to stop an assailant. If you're met with 3 assailants, how many shots are you gonna need? Hint, it's more than 10! And then there are the ones who are already dead, like the New Jersey woman who was still awaiting her gun permit when her ex stabbed her to death. What, you think your blessed government could protect them? Just check out the Supreme Court case Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, where police failed to enforce a restraining order and a woman's ex murdered her 3 children. The court ruled that police had no obligation to protect her and her children, and so they couldn't be sued. That is the kind of society you would create.
But in many of these incidents, not all, but in many of these incidents, with a handgun rather than an AR-15, the number dead would be lower.
What on earth makes you say that? It certainly isn't the statistics. Most mass shootings are committed with handguns, and overall there really aren't fewer dead people on average. You know when there is fewer dead people? When an armed citizen stops them, like I showed earlier.
Number 5, mandatory gun insurance.
Yeah, ought to work about as well as mandatory car insurance.
This is both a financial disincentive, which might just make the entire thing more expensive,
which also means it's a financial disincentive to have the means of protecting yourself, making the poor sitting ducks. And again, criminals don't really bother with getting things like gun insurance.
It is dramatically more expensive.
Yeah, fuck the poor, I guess.
Number 6, if you're under 25 and you want to get a gun, you should be required to provide 1, maybe 2 community support letters.
I don't even know where your diseased mind is going with this one. I'll just point out that, again, this won't stop anyone intent on doing harm, but will be yet another barrier in the way of people defending themselves.
Number 7, some weapons should be banned.
Some weapons already are, and yet criminals seem to have no problem getting them, like the Mandalay Bay shooter.
Number 8, there should be a periodic mental health evaluation.
As I showed in my video, Mental Illness and Violence, mentally ill people are no more likely to commit acts of violence, not even mass shootings. But they are more likely to be victims of violence. As I showed in that video, this position is nothing but outright bigotry.
Number 9, the licensing process should be more extensive.
So you want even more innocent people being killed by home invaders or exes who don't obey restraining orders. Like one that happened just 20 miles from where I live, where an ex shot his wife while she was making dinner with her children. And unlike a woman in Patterson, California, who had to shoot a stranger who attacked her husband with a firearm she'd gotten the day before the incident happened. Any later, and that might have turned out very differently.
And then number 10, there should be a gun buyback program.
Something else that has never, ever, ever worked. Funny how criminals never seem to take advantage of these. You know what actually does happen? People with homemade guns they threw together for about $20, such as slam-fire shotguns, turn it in for $150 or whatever the buyback amount is. They're just a waste of money, nothing more.
The United States is unique, and many Americans don't understand how weird it is to see firearms fetishized, violence celebrated, intelligence condemned.
Sounds like a projection confession to me. I think you're just talking about yourself there, Pakman. It's you and your ilk whose eyes light up every time something horrible like this happens, because you get to bloviate and virtue signal and push your sociopathic agenda, which won't work and will only put your fellow Americans in even greater danger. Remember that all this started when Pakman said that prayer doesn't work. Say words to God, nothing happens. But when his high priests say their words, put them on paper, go through the right ritual, it has the power to change the laws of economics, human psychology, and reality itself. That requires supernatural paranormal abilities. The only difference I can see is that Pakman's priests are the ones who just happen to be in power at the time.
We've done nothing, and it hasn't solved the problem.
In what way have we done nothing? Over a century of racist gun control laws, it's a form of eugenics, remember, restricting who can get guns and what kind and where you can carry, on and on and on, and these problems just keep getting worse. We've done nothing? How can anyone believe a liar like Pakman? So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.